everyone, and welcome back to Men Can Be Anorexic. My name is Connor, and for this week's video, I'd like to talk about discipline. But, as always before I say more, a trigger warning for anyone going through or recovering from anorexia, just because I might say some stuff that could be triggering or upsetting, and the last thing I want to do is put anyone in a bad place. Here in the US, we have a tendency to glorify discipline. I know this is the case in plenty of other countries as well, but I'm skeptical of anyone who generalizes on a global scale. I don't mean the punishment kind of discipline, but instead the self-control kind. Typically, when someone refers to another person as disciplined, their intention is to be complimentary. To have control over one's urges is considered an admirable trait. I don't entirely disagree. I think there are scenarios where discipline is both necessary and admirable. If the first of the month is approaching and you have the sudden urge to buy an $800 coat, exercising some self-control is probably the right call. But here's the problem. Many Americans seem to believe that discipline is always a good thing. No matter the circumstances, resisting your urges is seen as an indicator of moral fortitude. The more often you restrain yourself, from eating, checking Twitter, having sex, the better you are in the eyes of American society at large. This is a blog about anorexia, so I'll stick with the eating thing for now. For many, I think the desire to be thin stems partially from the desire to be seen as disciplined, as morally fortuitous. If you're fat, the people around you will assume that you have little to no control over the desire to eat. Because you're lacking in self-control, you must also be lacking in moral character. And because you're lacking in moral character, it follows that you're unworthy of kindness and respect. To be clear, I'm not suggesting that the desire for kindness and respect is the sole explanation for all cases of anorexia. It's well established that people restrict for myriad reasons. To cope with anxiety, to cope with trauma, to cope with feelings of low self-worth, and so on. It would be inaccurate and dangerous to reduce anorexia to a simple quest for social acceptance. But I think it's worth noting that many cases of anorexia do take place in the context of a culture that associates restraint with moral fortitude. If the ability to restrain oneself weren't celebrated to the extent that it is, would fewer people feel the need to restrict? I think so. You can roll your eyes all you want. But we can't fully understand the glorification of discipline without also understanding the justification of profit. Yes, I think capitalism is partially to blame. Profit is essential to capitalism. Without profit, there's no way to expand production. Without the expansion of production, unemployment skyrockets and economic depression ensues. Because profit plays such a key role in capitalism, it's drawn quite a bit of interest from economists of all kinds since the days of Adam Smith and David Ricardo. The men and women who've expanded upon the ideas of Smith and Ricardo are known as neoclassical economists, and their justification of profit is as follows. In order to sell stuff, capitalists first need to buy stuff, that is, inputs. These inputs, of course, are not for the private consumption of the capitalists, but instead for the production of output, goods that will be consumed by the masses. According to the neoclassicals, capitalists temporarily abstain from their own private consumption in order to produce goods for the masses. Profit, they say, is the reward that capitalists get in return for their abstinence. In other words, capitalists are rewarded for having the discipline to forego their own consumption. In fact, some disciples of Adam Smith, most notably Thomas Malthus, have gone so far as to argue that capitalists are the most morally fortuitous people in society, precisely because they have the discipline to temporarily abstain from their own consumption. Here's the TLDR version of everything I just said. Profit keeps the economy moving. Mainstream economists have long argued that profit is the reward for capitalist discipline. Therefore, the economy runs on discipline. All of this, of course, is a bunch of nonsense. But it's at the heart of economics textbooks across the country. It's been beaten into our heads for generations. It's been ingrained into our nation's genetic code. When the topic of capitalism's most heinous consequences is brought to the table, what comes to mind? The most common answers are probably colonialism, deindustrialization, inequality, and so on. There's no denying the horrors of these phenomena, and never in a million years would I compare anorexia to something like European imperialism. That being said, I think capitalism is relevant to conversations about anorexia. I can't talk about my experience with the disorder without in some way referring to discipline. And as I've tried to show today, there's no way to talk about discipline without also mentioning capitalism. Capitalism isn't some abstract concept that's confined to the realm of textbooks. It's a mode of social reproduction that touches each of our lives every single day, often in ways we don't even notice. Capitalism and its advocates are largely responsible for the mindset that often governs restrictive eating. If we weren't taught to associate restraint with moral strength, what reason would there be to eat less than we want to? And I think I will leave it on that thought for today. As always, thank you so much for watching. Down in the description box, you'll find the phone number for the Anorexia Nervosa and Associated Disorders Hotline, which you or anyone you know can call if you're looking for immediate help. Thank you so much, and keep your eye out for the next video.